There's a moment, sharper than a blade and quieter than a held breath, that can change the entire course of your life. It's the instant someone calls you out, maybe in public, maybe in private, maybe with a sneer or a subtle question that cuts deeper than any insult. They challenge your worth, your motives, your very character. In that split second, the world seems to pause, and all eyes real or imagined turn to you. What happens next is not just a reaction. It's a test, a crossroads, a silent referendum on who holds the power. Most people, almost everyone you know, have been conditioned since childhood to do the same thing, defend themselves. They scramble for words, for explanations, for justifications. I didn't mean it. That's not what I was trying to say. You misunderstood me. I swear I'm not like that. These responses spill out, almost involuntarily, because we're taught that to be misunderstood is to be in danger, that to be accused is to be at risk, and that the only way to survive is to clear your name as quickly as possible. It feels noble, even righteous, to stand up for yourself, to set the record straight, to make sure everyone knows your true intentions. But here's the brutal truth. The moment you start defending yourself, you've already lost the game you didn't even know you were playing. To Machiavelli, this was the first and most fatal mistake. The second you defend yourself, you admit without saying a word that you're weak enough to need to. In the ruthless arena of power, perception is everything. If they see you flinch, they don't see a victim. They see blood in the water. The world is full of people who are waiting for that sign of weakness, that little crack in your armor, that moment when you show you care what they think. And once you do, you become prey. This is the law Machiavelli understood before anyone else. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The man who doesn't, who stands silent and unbothered, forces the world to defend him instead. It's a reversal so subtle and so powerful that most people never even notice it happening. They think defending themselves is the path to vindication, but in reality, it's the path to surrender. Let's get one thing straight. Defending yourself almost never convinces anyone. People rarely change their minds because you explained yourself better or repeated your side of the story one more time. What actually happens is that you shift the power away from yourself. The moment you start justifying your actions, you're no longer playing your own game, you're playing theirs. You've accepted their framing, their rules, their authority to question you. And once you do that, you've handed them the keys to the narrative. Even if you're right, even if you're innocent, you still look guilty, because only the weak rush to explain. The strong, the truly powerful, let the silence burn. They let the accusation hang in the air, untouched, because they know the real move isn't to fight the accusation, it's to turn it into a mirror. Make the accuser doubt themselves. Make them look emotional, obsessed, bitter, unstable. Because the one who speaks first, who rushes to fill the silence, often loses control of the frame. And Machiavelli knew with a clarity that still terrifies people today that whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. Most people defend themselves because they desperately want to be understood. They believe deep down that if they just explain enough, clarify enough, repeat themselves enough, they'll finally be vindicated. They'll finally be seen for who they really are. But that belief doesn't come from strength. It comes from emotional weakness. It's not strategy, it's insecurity. The truth is, you don't want clarity. You want control. Clarity is for therapy. Control is for power. And power doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being feared, respected, and untouchable. So when someone calls you arrogant, cold, selfish, manipulative, and you immediately say, "No, you don't understand," you've already lost. Because now you're reacting. Now you're proving you care. Now you've put the ball in their court. And when you do that, you give up the most Machiavellian thing you have: mystery. Think about the most powerful people you've ever encountered. Not the loudest, not the most liked, but the ones who held silence like a weapon. The ones who made you second-guess yourself just by staring. The ones who, when attacked, never flinched. Machiavelli would tell you this: he who explains submits. He who remains silent forces others to fill in the blanks. And they almost always overestimate him. That's the game. When you don't react, when you let the accusation float in the air, They get uncomfortable. They start doubting their own words. They look around for validation and find none. Suddenly, their power shrinks while yours expands, because you've done the one thing no emotional person can handle. You made them talk to themselves. And that's how you flip the power. You let their accusation die in the echo of its own weakness. Let's go deeper. Imagine you walk into a room and someone throws shade, subtle or direct. Maybe it's a jab at your success, your attitude, your past. Everyone turns to see what you'll say, and here's your move. Say nothing. No defense, no retaliation, no smirk, just calm, total stillness. In that moment, you are untouchable, because everyone in the room is now forced to ask, why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Is he above this? Did that attack just make him stronger? You just flipped the entire social frame. Because people aren't watching the accusation, they're watching your response. And silence, when delivered with presence, speaks louder than any justification ever could. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't just study politics, he studied psychology. And he understood one thing better than anyone. Power isn't what you say. It's what people believe you could say, but choose not to. Now, here's the coldest move of all. Sometimes you don't just ignore the accusation, you invert it. Someone calls you manipulative. Smile, look past them and say, if that's how you see it. Not defensive, not apologetic, just cool, neutral detachment. What happens? They scramble because they were hoping for a fight. They were hoping to watch you squirm. Instead, they're left holding their own weapon. That's when the guilt sets in on their side. They start wondering if they overstepped, if they embarrassed themselves, if they look insecure now. And guess what? They do. You just took the energy they threw at you and made them carry it without lifting a finger. There's a moment when silence becomes unbearable, not for you, but for the one who expected a reaction. That's when the tables turn. They thought they were the accuser. Now they're exposed as the one begging for attention. And you just became something far more powerful than innocent. You became untouchable. Machiavelli understood something that most people will never grasp. Words are not to clarify truth, but to obscure it. And when someone attacks you, subtly or directly, they want you to fight the fog. They want to drown you in emotional explanation, because the more you explain, the less certain you appear. So instead, let them fill the silence. And what happens? They overplay. They repeat themselves. They start looking desperate, emotional, unstable. You said nothing, but now they're the one under judgment, because the crowd isn't listening to what's being said. They're watching who's calm and who's rattled. That's social power. And it doesn't come from being right. It comes from being untouchable. Picture yourself in a crowded room, the air thick with unspoken competition and subtle power plays. Someone, maybe with a smirk or a casual tone, throws a jab your way. It could be about your recent success, your attitude, your past mistakes, anything that might get under your skin. Instantly, every eye in the room flickers to you, waiting, hungry for your reaction. This is the moment most people dread. The moment they feel compelled to defend, to explain, to prove themselves. But the true master of power does something different. Instead of scrambling for words or letting their face betray a flicker of emotion, they do nothing. No defense, no witty comeback, not even a smirk, just calm, total stillness. In that moment, you become untouchable. The silence you hold is not empty. It's charged, magnetic, and suddenly everyone in the room is forced to wonder, why didn't you react? Do you know something they don't? Are you above this? Did that attack just make you stronger? The entire social frame flips, and now the accuser is left exposed, their words echoing awkwardly in the space you refuse to fill. People aren't really watching the accusation, they're watching your response. And silence, when delivered with presence and composure, speaks louder than any justification ever could. Machiavelli understood this on a level that most never will. He knew that power isn't about what you say, it's about what people believe you could say, but choose not to. The threat of your words, the possibility of your reaction, becomes more powerful than any actual response. Sometimes, you don't just ignore the accusation, you invert it. Someone calls you manipulative, hoping to see you squirm. Instead, You offer a small, almost amused smile, look past them and say, "If that's how you see it." No defense, no apology, just cool, neutral detachment. Suddenly, the energy in the room shifts. The accuser, who was hoping for a fight, is left holding their own weapon, and the guilt starts to creep in on their side. They wonder if they overstepped, if they embarrassed themselves, if they look insecure now. And the truth is, they do. You've taken the energy they hurled at you and made them carry it, all without lifting a finger. There's a point where silence becomes unbearable, not for you, but for the one who expected a reaction. That's when the tables turn. The accuser, who thought they were in control, is now exposed as the one desperate for attention, the one who needs validation. And you become something far more powerful than innocent. You become untouchable. Machiavelli understood that words are not meant to clarify truth, but to obscure it. When someone attacks you, they want you to fight the fog, to drown in emotional explanation, because the more you explain, the less certain you appear. So let them fill the silence. Watch as they overplay their hand, repeat themselves, and start to look desperate, emotional, unstable. You haven't said a word, but now they're the one under judgment, because the crowd isn't listening to the words they're watching. Who's calm and who's rattled. That's real social power. It doesn't come from being right, it comes from being untouchable. This principle doesn't just apply in social gatherings. In business meetings, the stakes are even higher. Imagine someone subtly undermines you, questioning your strategy or your ideas in front of the team. Most people lean forward, eager to explain, to prove, to clarify. They get nervous and the room can smell it. But the Machiavellian operator leans back, waits, maybe even lets a small, knowing smile play at the corners of his mouth. If he speaks, it's not a defense, it's a redirect. "Let's hear your strategy then." Now the attacker is on the spot, forced to perform, and the room's attention shifts. Suddenly, they are being evaluated. They are under pressure, because silence from the confident is an accusation without words. It makes people feel small without you doing anything at all. In romantic or personal relationships, this approach is even more potent. Say your partner accuses you of not caring anymore. The average person panics, launching into explanations, reassurances, defenses, and in doing so, validates the emotional frame of the accusation. But the Machiavellian approach is different. You don't dismiss them. You don't argue. You let the weight of the accusation hang in the air. You watch as they feel their own drama echo in the space between you. Then with calm you respond, "That's not how I see it." Short, grounded, no explanation, no justification. Now they feel uncertain. They question their own tone. They wonder if they were too reactive. In that moment, you hold power over what matters most: the emotional tempo. Whoever controls the tempo controls the frame. There's an even colder tactic. Don't just remain calm when accused disappear. Someone insults you, don't reply, don't respond, don't acknowledge, but don't block them either. Let your absence sit like a mirror. Let them stew in the silence of being ignored. This breaks people in two ways. First, they realize you didn't even deem them worthy of a response. Second, they start spinning internal narratives. And most of the time, it destroys their composure. The average person survives on emotional validation, even in conflict. If you take that away, they wither, they spiral, they post more, they talk to others, they try to bait a reply. With every new attempt, they look weaker, more obsessed, more unhinged, while you remain perfectly still. That's when you win it, because you proved anything, but because they destroyed themselves trying to get a reaction from you. Now, take it to the next level. Instead of defending yourself when attacked, make their accusation look like a sign of their own weakness. Someone calls you arrogant? Strange that confidence makes people so uncomfortable. Someone says you're manipulative? Only people who can't be influenced say that. Someone calls you fake? Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. You don't just deny the accusation, you make it their insecurity. Now they're the ones scrambling to defend themselves. It's not just a reversal. It's a power judo throw. You use their own emotional force and turn it into their public collapse. Machiavelli would call this the turn of the blade. Don't meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on his own blade. The world teaches you to defend your reputation, to explain yourself, to clear your name. But Machiavelli saw the trap. The moment you chase innocence, you admit guilt. The true strategist never plays that game. Instead, he appears too composed to be shaken, too elevated to care, too clear on his position to explain it. Slowly, those who try to tear him down start looking unstable, reactive, jealous, weak. The more you defend, the more it looks like you need to. The more you ignore, the more dangerous they assume you are. And that assumption is where power is born. Most people think power is about proving yourself, proving you're right, proving you're not what they say you are, proving you're better than their perception. But Machiavelli would smirk at this, because the second you try to prove anything, you've already declared the other person's judgment valid. When you hand someone that validation, you hand them your leash. In any group, any social setting, any dinner table or meeting, someone might throw a public jab. You always act like you know everything. Oh, he's always like this. I guess being humble isn't your thing. Most people tense up, try to laugh it off, or worse, respond with an explanation, thinking they're saving face. But what they're really doing is confirming that a hit was landed. Now everyone's watching the defense, and that alone makes the original jab look true. The Machiavellian does something else. He pauses, holds silence for just 2 seconds, scans the room not with aggression, but with quiet amusement. Then, and only if needed, offers something calm, precise, and dismissive. You seem emotional today. Interesting take. Or nothing at all, just a long, still gaze. What happens next is predictable. The attacker shifts, fidgets, looks for backup, tries to explain their joke, feels the heat of the room shifting onto them. Your lack of reaction just told the room something louder than words ever could. You're not the one under judgment, they are. In the digital arena, things escalate even faster. Comments, posts, call-outs, DMs, people trying to bait you into reacting. Here's the truth, Machiavelli would burn into your mind. In the court of public opinion, silence speaks guilt, unless your silence commands fear. So, when you're attacked online, don't defend, don't explain, distort, don't address the claim, redirect the energy back into the crowd. Someone says you're toxic or manipulative. Instead of posting a tearful defense or a long clarification, you post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." You didn't defend. You reframed the accusation into a badge of power. Now they look bitter, you look unfazed, and the audience begins to question who's really in control. That's not damage control, that's narrative dominance. There are 3 tools you can use instead of defending yourself. Silence, the default, cold, powerful, leaving them exposed. Deflection, reframing the narrative without acknowledging the jab. And precision, cut short, sharp truths that end the game immediately. Someone says, "You're full of yourself." You respond, "Confidence upsets the insecure." They say, "You're fake." You respond, "I don't owe you authenticity." They say, "You think you're better than everyone?" You respond, "No, I just don't think like everyone." These aren't defenses. They're status assertions. They don't say, "I'm not guilty." They say, "You can't touch me." That's the core. The Machiavellian never begs to be seen as good. He dares people to see him as bad and walks taller for it. When you refuse to defend yourself, something strange happens to your enemies. They become unhinged because they expected a battle, and instead they're swinging at smoke. They start escalating, pushing harder, getting more dramatic, exposing more of their insecurity. The more they do, the more you rise in the eyes of others. Why? Because you've made them perform their own collapse. That's the Machiavellian endgame. You don't destroy your enemies, you let their obsession with you destroy them. Being misunderstood isn't dangerous. Being predictable is far worse. The misunderstood man has mystery. The predictable man is easy to manipulate. People who are always trying to clear things up are seen as desperate. People who remain calmly misunderstood are feared. Machiavelli knew, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But even more, it's better to be confusing than predictable. The confused man is cautious. He watches you. He doesn't act rashly. That means you control the field. Let's crush the final illusion. You don't need a good reputation to win. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation is expected to be clean, soft, agreeable. The man with a strong reputation isn't always liked. isn't always trusted, but no one dares move against him casually. That's what happens when you never defend yourself. Your reputation becomes not about what people believe, but what they fear you'll do next. That's how you flip the power. You stop fighting for approval and instead create an aura that makes people cautious. Even your silence feels like a decision, and every move you don't make becomes a move in their mind. The final evolution is not silence, it's aura, a presence so composed, so secure, so far above the petty noise that accusations simply evaporate before they land. This doesn't come from being emotionless, it comes from being unbothered by design. Once you've trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, not to seek validation, you cross a line where your existence becomes the defense. That's when power becomes effortless. Think about the few people in life who never explain themselves. They don't post long rants, don't correct the record, don't argue with critics, and yet people respect them more. Why? Because silence in the face of accusation creates myth. It invites interpretation. The human mind, when left without an explanation, fills the void with strength. People assume you must be dangerous, you must know something they don't. You must be so secure in who you are that you don't even blink when challenged. That assumption is what makes people follow you. Machiavelli didn't care about being good. He cared about being in control. The one who never defends is always in control of perception, even when surrounded by lies. Here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more alone you look, because no one feels the need to step in when you're already arguing on your own behalf. But if you remain calm, if you stand silent, unfazed, people start to feel the urge to defend you. They say, "That was uncalled for. He didn't deserve that. Why are you coming after him? He didn't even respond," and you're still pushing. Suddenly, they become your shield. And what's better than defending yourself? Letting others do it for you without asking. That's Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd argue your case while you remain above the noise. Now you're not just respected, you're elevated. It doesn't happen overnight. You build it like a fortress, stone by stone, by acting with restraint, by choosing stillness over reaction, by never explaining more than you must. Start here. Never correct insults that are clearly meant to provoke. Let them speak. Let them echo. Your silence tells the room that the insult didn't even register on your radar. Respond to indirect shots with calm confusion, not offense. "Is that how you see it?" said with total serenity, dismantles the emotional energy behind their attack. Use short closing phrases instead of defenses. Noted. Okay. Think what you like. Time will tell. Each one closes the door, doesn't invite more debate, ends the scene. Study how you hold your face, your body, your gaze. The Machiavellian never twitches, flinches, or tenses. Stillness is his armor. The more still you are when others lose control, the more your power expands silently. When people don't know how to provoke you, they fear you, because you become unpredictable and erratic, but unreadable. A mirror that reflects their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would say, "The most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first. It is the one who never needs to." You will reach a point where the attacks stop, not because you fought them, but because people know they'll lose before they start. Your presence says, "I don't play defense. I let others destroy themselves while trying to reach me." There is a difference between strength and immunity. Strength still flinches, still reacts, still gets emotional even if it fights back. Immunity doesn't even acknowledge the hit. That's the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the argument. You end the argument before it starts by never needing to answer it. Because when you no longer defend yourself, people stop seeing you as someone who needs to be put on trial. You're not on their level. You've moved beyond the court of public approval. The only judgment that matters is your own. From this point on, you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define your silence. And people feel that. They feel the certainty behind your eyes, the calmness in your posture, the danger in your quiet. You're not resisting anymore. You're commanding, and that's when the room shifts. The crowd speaks less. Your enemies grow quieter. Your name carries weight not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it. Never defending yourself doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking only when it shifts the power. When you say something, it should feel like a move, not a response. Because every time you don't explain yourself, every time you hold still while the world spins, you become the one thing they can't control, a man who answers to no one.